of July. Today is July the 28th, the day that NFL teams officially report to training camp. And so many questions about the future of the NFL season, Major League Baseball season. And we're going to get into all that today. So welcome, welcome, welcome. In just a few moments, Zina Garrison is going to join me, and we're going to talk a little tennis. And we're going to talk about her run to the US Open in 1990 when she reached the finals, faced Martina Navratilova. At that time, she became the first African-American woman to reach a Wimbledon final since Althea Gibson did it in 1958. So that was 1990. It had been a minute. And we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more. But I want to start today talking about what's happening in Major League Baseball. Yesterday, the Marlins shut down their home opener because of 13 players and coaches testing positive after their series with the Phillies. So that has sent, I don't want to say shockwaves through Major League Baseball, but it is making everybody kind of think about what's happening, rethink about the plan, the protocol, while baseball says, hey, we've got a good plan. We knew that some people were going to test positive, but the virus halts the second Yankees and Phillies game. 4 more Marlin tested positive for the coronavirus, which brought that number, I believe, to 13. So it does perhaps put the season in danger, but we will see. I want you to hear from Major League Baseball. Wait a minute. From Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred, who talks about, make sure I bring the right one up, who was asked about this and if it does in fact put the season in danger. And this is what he had to say on Get Up. Here we go.
I don't put this in the nightmare category. I mean, obviously, we don't want any player to get exposed. It's not a positive thing, but I don't see it as a nightmare. We expected we were going to have positives at some point in time. I remain optimistic that the protocols are strong enough that it will allow us to continue to play even through an outbreak like this and complete our season.
Well, a lot of players are obviously going to be keeping a close eye on this, including David Price, the pitcher who opted out of this return, tweeting yesterday, now we really get to see if baseball is going to put players' health first. Remember when Manfred said players' health was paramount? Part of the reason I'm at home right now is because players' health wasn't being put first. I can see that hasn't changed. So skepticism out there, to say the least. And to begin the conversation, our insider, Jeff Passan, is with us, and Jessica Mendoza is up early this morning as well. But Jeff, I'll start with you. It was all your reporting right here on this program yesterday that began this conversation. What are we hearing this morning?
Well, Greeny, this might not be over. We have to understand that the Miami Marlins got tested again yesterday, and we know by now the incubation period for coronavirus is not just 1 or 2 days. It can stretch out as long as 4 or 5 days possibly. So we could see even more positive tests coming back today. Already the roster has been ravaged by the Marlins. They're making phone calls around to free agents asking if they might be able to make it down to Miami and fill out this roster that's going to be losing, upward of a dozen people potentially for an indeterminate amount of time. And that's the confusing part for the Marlins baseball-wise. How do they put together a competitive baseball team when Rob Manfred says that competitive integrity is at the forefront of him deciding whether the season continues or not?
So that is, to give you an update, a snapshot of what's happening in Major League Baseball. Okay, so That was with Marlins. They played the Phillies. There have been some Phillies who tested positive. Now the series that the Yankees and the Phillies have halted their series. So what does that say? What it says is there continues to be a lot of unanswered questions. All right. That's kind of an update from what's happening in baseball. In Houston, the Houston Astros started their season. They got off to I would say a really good start with the playing at home against the Seattle Mariners. Next up, they play what will be a rematch of the 2017 World Series. They play host to the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I was trying to bring you up to date on something. Okay. So the Astros, it's interesting. This weekend, there was a tweet where someone posted that Justin Verlander was out for the season because of an injury. He came back and posted the next day. That's not correct. I am not out for the season. It's not as serious as some would make it out to be. At any rate, the Houston Astros are 3-1 as they start this young season, which puts them atop of the American League West, tied with the Oakland A's, who are also 3-1. I mean, this thing is just getting kicked off, but so much still to know, right? So much still to know. They play host to the Los Angeles Dodgers, who are 2-2, and it's a shortened season. So while every game always counts, every game really, really does count. It's a little bit of an update from what's happening with Major League Baseball. We'll get into that more later. Of course, today is the day NFL teams report to training camp, right? They're getting started. While Roger Goodell came out about a week ago, maybe a little more than that, said, hey, we're good to go. Everything's set. Everything is set, but everything is still really very uncertain. When you talk to players off the record, they're concerned. And some on the record have been, but they're concerned that there are not a lot of answers about the protocol, about how things are going to work. There's a lot of uncertainty. So while today, teams are reporting, today is July 28th, this is a little bit of what's happening. There have now been 5 players from the New England Patriots who have opted out of this season. I'm going to let you hear a little bit from one of the defensive backs has a podcast, and he talks about his concern. Hang on a second.
As well, where training camps are opening around the country today amid both the coronavirus pandemic and the backdrop of the Marlins outbreak. I want you to hear from Patriots corner Jason McCourty on his podcast called Double Coverage, saying he's concerned about the league and its ability to play.
I go on social media, and it makes me very nervous to think there will be a season. Seeing guys posting a video in a nightclub, and it's just like, we're attempting to play football. That's not going to be okay. You see guys working out in one city on a Monday, working out in another city on a Tuesday. So for me, it is nerve-wracking, and those are the things that, for me, make it nervous to say, are we going to be able to have an entire season?
Well, my football crew is here this morning. Adam Schefter, Dan Orlovsky, Louis Riddick, and Sheffield. I'll start with you because there's a Patriot yesterday talking about his concerns, and we have news from New England this morning.
Greeny, Dont'a Hightower, the Patriots Pro Bowl linebacker, a three-time Super Bowl champion, is going to be opting out this season. This is the biggest defensive name to date of a player leaving behind this season. He's the Patriots' defensive signal caller. He leaves behind an $8 million base salary, and he is one of right now 5 New England Patriots. 5. To be opting out this season, joining the likes of running back Brandon Bolden and offensive tackle Marcus Cannon, amongst others. This is a blow to the Patriots defense that already was going to be without Kyle Van Noy, who left during free agency, Jamie Collins, Danny Shelton. There are a number of players that have left this New England defense, but maybe the biggest loss comes this morning with the news that Dont'a Hightower is opting out.
All right, so that's some news from New England. So you see that there are still players with a lot of concern. We will see if there are any other players around the league as teams report today that also decide to opt out. I think that Zena is with us now and ready to join. I want to welcome Zena. Good morning, Zena. Welcome to Chalk Talk.
Hi, is my mic on?
Yes, your mic is on.
Okay, good. How are you today?
Good. So I opened the show and I mentioned that it has been 30 years. Of course, you were just, I don't know, 5 or 6 maybe when you when you played that championship that championship match against Martina in 1990 at Wimbledon, the first African American female to do that since Althea Gibson, which had been in 1958. So. I mean, all of that is historic. And for me, it was the run up to the finals. I was looking at some of those highlights, which got me a little behind this morning, of the matches that you played, because it was the run to the finals, to me, that was way more historic than the actual final. Can you just talk about those 2 weeks, if you will?
Yeah, it was actually, it's just amazing, like you said, thinking about the 30 years, but the week and a half before leading into Wimbledon, I actually could not hit a ball. I probably had played some of the worst tennis I had ever played in my entire life. I even thought about quitting. My coach at the time, Sherwood Stewart, just told me to consistently keep going. So, and I also, had a sports therapist there as well. Because it was a shot I kept missing. So when I had the opportunity to play Monica Seles, who hadn't lost something like 30-something matches, she was on a winning streak, and I got the exact same forehand in the middle of the court that I had been missing all year. I just laced it and never looked back. And then to play Steffi Graf, that match was like amazing, because I was one of those matches where I felt like I could win just all the way to the end, no matter what happened. And when I hit the ace at the end, it was just amazing.
So then to have to get to the finals and then to have to face Martina, who basically, prior to the Williams sisters coming along, I mean, Martina was Wimbledon, right? That was her tournament. And of course, you guys both had some things similar about your game, because it was different back then. You both were a bit of serving volleyers. You had a game that wasn't just sitting back and playing. So it was really exciting tennis. But can you told a story about what happened before the match even started in the locker room? Can you share that story?
Yeah, actually, I was sitting there waiting for the match, and Althea Gibson actually walked in. And I was like just totally blown away, and even more blown away when she consistently starts saying, well, this is where I popped my champagne, and this is where I got ready, and all of this. And I was already nervous, so it just sent me overboard even more. Just a thought. I mean, can you even imagine? I mean, Althea Gibson actually walking into the locker room right before you're getting ready to play Martina Navratilova, who you've lost 30-something times to. So it was just an amazing, and still one of my favorite pictures is after the match, when I had the opportunity to have a picture with Althea Gibson and also Arthur Ashe, and it was just simply amazing.
That kind of gives you goosebumps when you think about that. I remember that match in your career, and there's another match that I remember too, and I was actually at that match at the U.S. Open when you defeated Chris Evert in her last tournament, and you started crying. I was like, are you kidding me? I remember going, what are you doing? You're like, I beat Chris Evert. So those are two. There's many matches I remember, but those are two that always stand out to me in your career.
Well, that match, Kim, too. Also, you and I grew up and playing tennis together. So, we all had, we had a Chris Evert racket or thought about having one. And so I was always that player that knew what other players meant to the game. And I understood the history that Chris had brought to the game, and that, I was going to, the fact that I retired her, but I was not ready for when I went into the locker room. I mean, when I went into the media room and someone called me a villain for beating her, that I was not ready for.
Yeah, right. That's something that's not widely reported. I remember that as well, a villain. So 30 years ago, you've been away. You've been retired from the game for a minute, but never away from it. So now fast forward, we're in 2020. We're in the midst of a pandemic. Wimbledon was canceled, right, for the first time in decades. U.S. Open is scheduled to take place coming up later next month, and you laugh, and I'm like, is that possible? And what does it look like? What is the update that you can give us about the U.S. Open?
Well, from what I hear, it's going to go on, and they're really working on trying to make it happen. But it's, it's an everyday situation, trying to figure out, players got to come from different countries, and it's going to be interesting. I think, I don't know for sure, but in my mind, I would think that it's going to go down to the wire, basically. Because every day something is changing. We're learning something different about, coronavirus and how it affects. And so it's going to go down to the wire, but they're going to really try to make it happen.
Are they talking about having it with or without fans? Have you heard that?
I have heard without fans, and so somewhat with the U.S. Open kind of being within it. Well, it will be like its own bubble, kind of going after what they're doing in NBA, trying to make it, where the players won't necessarily have to leave. Even the fact I've heard of, hotels maybe being close to the site, which is, it's not many out in Flushing, so that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, because you could go. I'll say it, because those aren't the luxurious hotels you're staying in. Let's just be honest about it. Those are not the places that players normally stay.
No, especially tennis players. They're extremely spoiled and used to, top notch the best. So this will be interesting.
So have you heard anything from any players? I mean, we know that this summer, we know that Francis was one that tested positive, that ended up having to deal with the COVID-19. And, you would say, okay, tennis is one of the safer sports because, you don't have to really have contact. But you you still have to go back to everybody being responsible and doing what they're supposed to, like not going out. And I think that's where the really big challenge comes in, the actual competition part, being across the net from someone, but, theoretically make it a safe sport to play. But there's so many other factors that go into it.
Yeah, it's actually, it's funny you talked about Francis, because I actually texted him yesterday to see how he was doing. He said he's gotten much better. He's getting his strength, he's getting his strength back. He started practicing again as well. And, good thing is he's young and didn't have any major symptoms and all of that. But, I just think it is one of those things, because you are going to get a lot of young players or even older players, just, not used to somebody telling them what they can do and how they can move around is a challenge. And I've really been paying a lot of attention to the NBA in that respect, because, quote unquote, they're spoiled athletes like tennis players as well, and, make a lot of money. And that's the thing, being able to tell them what they can do and what they can't do is the biggest challenge.
I'm talking with Zina Garrison, tennis legend and my friend. You mentioned the NBA, and so far it has worked pretty well. I mean, we know about Lou Williams leaving the bubble. We know of some players who crossed the bubble line, if you will, for food.
For some chicken wings. For some chicken
wings at a strip club. But here's the thing, I'm just going to say it. When I first heard about the bubble with the NBA, I thought, in theory, it's a good idea. But you're talking about these players, all of these young men, being away from their wives and their girlfriends for a couple of months and not having any, activity. I'm still like, is that really gonna last? I understand the challenge of bringing your families to Orlando, I guess, because then you've got to manage even more people, like making sure they stay in the bubble. So, it's not like somebody said, well, it's like when you go to the Olympics. No, it's not. You played in the Olympics, so you can talk about that. It's much more restricted. So, my hope is that no one gets really sick and it has illnesses that are tough to really overcome. But it's so much we don't know about this virus.
Yeah, it's much more restricted. I think their plan is a good plan to, if you can, bubble someone. But I think they also, Disney World, is it Disney World, Disneyland? Disney World, they actually have so much space. I think they probably should have carved out a family village and just, have everybody there. And just, because that would just make it so much easier and so much more relaxed. And yeah, you have to manage a couple more players, but what's the difference of managing a couple of more a couple of more families,
Right.
And people than trying to manage maybe not finishing the rest of the season. That's the way I see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just, and here's the thing, you said it earlier, things are changing every day as it relates to this virus. We find new information or different information, or maybe we should do this, maybe we should not do that. So before you came on, I played a clip from Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball. Of course, the Marlins have 13 players now, and coaches who have tested positive. So they had to shut down their home opener. They're having to, get more players because, that's a big part of your roster. And the Phillies, who they played, have had to shut down their games with the Yankees. They've had some players test positive. And now Rob Manfred says, nope, we don't think baseball season is in jeopardy. I just still think,
I don't know what planet he's on. I honestly, when I heard him say that too, I'm like, well, what planet are you on and what are you watching? Like, it's in jeopardy every day, no matter who you are, what you're doing, and what business you're working at, you're in jeopardy. So that was kind of interesting to me.
It was interesting. And speaking of baseball, the Houston Astros are 3-1 in this young season, the 60-game season. Of course, every game is always big, but when you only play 60, they're really, really big. They play the Dodgers in their next series. They've gotten off to a good start. It's kind of weird watching the games with no fans. And I can tell you, I've been watching the games on TV. I've not yet ventured to Minute Maid Park. I'm waiting for things here in our city to kind of calm down a little bit. Yeah. I get the same access, by Zoom with the players as I would have in the stadium. And so I hope to maybe go there in the next couple of weeks. But it is, you hope everybody is well and stays healthy. It's just really interesting times. But today is the day NFL players report. As you were coming on, I played a clip where they talked about the New England Patriots have 5 players on just that team alone that have opted out. I think there's a lot of concern, and while the NFL's office is saying, we got it under control and buildings are being really clean, I think when you talk about protocols, it's so much more than that. I mean, as an athlete, what are the answers in terms of what happens if someone tests positive? What does it mean for my contract? How does this impact my future standing with the team and the league, and who pays for what? I'm sure as an athlete, those are things that would concern you as well, in addition to your health.
Yeah, well, you know me, Kim. I've been OCD for quite some time and never liked people would sweat or anything like so. Just even the thought of contact sport, and the hitting and being that close and breathing on you. And, I've taken some COVID-19 certification classes. So it's going to be interesting. And I don't see how they're going to be able to control it. But more than anything is I understand the money part of it, and the fans want to see football, and everybody wants to, but we still don't know what it does to people's health. I mean, we really don't know. And, are we so self-centered that we would not want to see our favorite players' health be in better shape than to them to go out and just maybe miss a season?
So that's a great question. I'm talking with Zina Garrison, a tennis legend, and we talked about her historic run to Wimbledon in 1990 when she was 10.
Thanks for that.
30 years ago. At the heart of it is money. I mean, that's what it is, right? It's the hundreds of millions of dollars, $1 billion TV contract. It's that I think motivates it. Now, granted, the players, it's their livelihood. They want to play. They miss it. I mean, there's some of that. But, you have NFL teams talking about having fans, right? I heard reports the Texans are saying they'll have like 50% of the stadium. I don't know who those fans are that are going. And I think it depends on what city you're in. What are they saying in the city that you're in? Because in this city, they're saying no large gatherings, so I don't know how that would work. And And you're right, there's just so much that is still uncertain. And I think the big problem, and I'm going to get you to talk about some of this because you did get certified with some of this contract tracing and know about this virus. Because there's no national strategy, there's nothing that says, here's what everybody's doing. I think that makes it really more difficult to flatten the curve, because while New York is doing one thing and Texas is doing something else and they flatten and then we serve, it's like it can never really, across the country, really flatten, and people are moving around. I mean, I talked to somebody yesterday who's planning a vacation and I'm like, really? You're going for a vacation? I think that's admirable. I'm just not there yet. So what did you learn? What are some of the things you learned when you got certified?
I think the biggest thing is, and people keep constantly saying it, stay your distance, Actually, they say 6 feet. It really probably should be more like 10 or 12. Because especially if you're inside, because of the air condition, they now just recently said, I heard somewhere where they've known it's airborne, but it can stay within aerosol. I think it's the word they use. It can stay if there's, in air condition, it can stay in there a little bit longer. I think people should pay attention to that. Outside, actually, you have a better opportunity and a better chance. So we should do more things. And the other thing, washing your hands, these are some very common sense stuff, but the mask, and once again, we say the whole mask thing, it is to protect yourself. But more than anything, it's protecting others. You're protecting others, and others should be protecting you. It's something just that simple. And completely wear the mask over your nose. You see a lot of times people wear their mask and they're wearing it down. Well, that's not helping. And the other thing I would say, which they have not saying, there has been some cases where it's gone through your eyes. So protect your eyes as well.
I'm talking with Zina Garrison, tennis legend, but she also got certified. Well, she's not a doctor, but she did go through a certification.
No, I'm not.
Right. So I know I just want to throw that out there. But you said something interesting. They say 6 feet, and you said, to be safe, make it 10 feet, right? And it is, if somebody were to, speak or, any kind of droplets that come out or sneeze, if you're just, that's how the virus is spread, from that kind of, bodily activity or fluid.
And people talking loudly, like, if you have that friend that likes to talk loud and screaming and hey girl, whatever, you might want to stay away from them for sure. But because that's just so much. But it's just really, people need to understand that you need to be responsible for yourself, but be responsible of others. And what I'm finding out, Kim, people are having if people are selfish people, they're having a hard time helping someone else or protecting someone else. And that's really what it is.
You just said a mouthful, because this really is about being considerate about your neighbors, about your other family members and your friends, and just be cautious and be considerate, right? So I think there's a lot to say there. I'm talking with Zina Garrison, and we're talking about how COVID-19 is impacting sports, but it's impacting so much more. Like here in Houston, you of course have the Zina Garrison Foundation, and normally you would be in full swing with your summer program. So what happened with your summer program this year, and what is the future looking like for ZGA?
Each and every day, it's something, Yolanda Bradshaw, who's been running my program now for a couple of years. It's like, we're just talking today, like, you're excited and you want to get a couple of kids on the court and everything. And then, you're like, another rule comes up. So we will start at a very small level with 3 or 4 kids. Well, about 4 kids and to one coach. And we'll start off that way. But people don't even think about the little things. Is the restrooms are closed at public parks. I mean, so how do you do that? We have a restroom, but then as far as health wise, you can't let everybody go in there. So it's a lot of little things. It's not just having a kid on the court. It's like, How much time can they be on the court? Yeah, the distance is great, but like I said, what if they have to go to the restroom? What if some kid tries to drink from a water fountain? I'm more aptable to be on the cautious end than to get someone out there and then something happens and I would feel absolutely horrible. So we're kind of we're trying to figure it out, Kim, basically is what I'm telling you.
What about touching tennis balls? Have you heard anything about that? So everybody will get their own tennis balls whenever you are able to get back on the court?
Yeah, so the United States Tennis Association has come up with some rules, and so not touching your own ball, not touching someone else's balls is the thing. They've come up where you can write, your little initials on it. I'm actually looking into hopefully Tennis Express will give us some those ball hopper things, and I want every kid to be able to have one of those in what we're calling their home package. And trying to do things because you've played tennis before. It's very hard to not go and try to pick up somebody else's ball that they just hit or they played. Just even the thought of that, and it's just finding different ways. Right now, the World Team Tennis is being played right now. And so all the players within themselves, they pick up their players' balls and stuff like that. So it's interesting. We'll figure it. We're trying to figure out different ways within tennis.
I had somebody reach out to me and ask a question about, said they had a high school person, a young man. I want to say, I don't know if he's 15 or 16, but plays tennis. And
I think he's 16 because Alvin called me.
I said, I think I would direct you to the expert, which is Zena. But what would you say to young people now who want to know what they should be doing, what they can be doing?
Yeah, actually, thanks for that recommendation. I actually sent him on to Farrell. But, the young guy wants to try to possibly play like in a Division II school, and he's in high school. And, the first and foremost thing is to have a professional coach, someone to look at you and to see where you go. And, the great thing is right now he has time to really work on his game. Or to just find a coach that you could be one-on-one with and actually get some time in to work on it, because there's so much uncertainty right now. He actually got some extra time that might not have had before.
Right. One of the things I asked, and I said, I'm sure Zena's going to ask you this, but first of all, nothing against high school tennis in the state of Texas, but you got to play more than that. Like, is he playing in USTA? Where is he in the championship ranking? Of course, he didn't know any. When I asked him, he said, I'll get that information before I call Zena. So, but those are things. So listen, for people who are looking for something to do now and you're used to playing team sports, they could go out and play some tennis. You could hit against the wall, right? And work on some skills. It could be a time for some new people to come to the sport.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity, and like I said, but still without a distance. But it's that sport. I always think about what John Lucas always used: tennis and basketball. It's just good cardio, to get out there and to be able to run around. But like you said, it's a great opportunity to learn a new sport as well.
I'm talking with Zena Garrison. I like to call her tennis legend because that makes me feel
okay.
So what's on the horizon? I know everything's changing day by day. So you and Yolanda and your team looking to get something going for the fall? Is that what you're hoping that can happen, or would it be sooner than that you can maybe get on the court?
We're actually looking to get on the court pretty soon, within the next week or so, actually.
Oh, that's awesome.
Just to get a couple of kids, and it will not be anywhere close to a full program, but some of our kids that have been within the program for a while, they're itching. They're just itching to get back out there. And some of them are taking, Addison and Farrell do, a little lessons and stuff with them. But, it's hard because they're young, they want to see their friends, but also as adults that are teaching the game, we have to be responsible as well. We got to wear our mask. We got to make sure that people are staying, safely distanced. Because Kim, the honest truth that I'm noticing right now, people are gotten very relaxed, as if this thing has gone away.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's been around for a while. And because while we see the numbers rising every day, we see the death toll being, to me, just outrageous. I think other people are saying, well, so many people are surviving it, which is great. I wish everyone could survive it, but the goal is to not get the virus because there's so many unanswered questions. And so I see people that aren't really taking it seriously, and it's a little scary to me. And I get frustrated because I don't understand why they don't understand that this is a real thing.
Yeah, I get very frustrated. And so, about a month ago, a couple weeks ago, whatever, I took my sister and her brother-in-law in to do their taxes and stuff like that. And they walked in there and the lady didn't have a mask on. And I'm like, no, like she doesn't need to be working on you. Well, the interesting stuff, my sister was like, it's okay. And I think people have gotten so relaxed. It's like she felt like because she was going into the building, she didn't have a mask on. So I went in there and said something when the lady came back with the mask. But I think we have to call people out,
Right.
in a very respectful way, not trying to get, 1 million followers when somebody cussing you out or something like that. But we have to hold people accountable as well. So I think it's a way to ask.
If I'm going to do business with somebody or go be in someone's space, that they are wearing a mask.
Yeah.
And if not, then I probably should be doing that someplace else.
I even asked when DoorDash or something, when I order DoorDash or something, I'm like, do they wear a mask? Make sure they wear a mask, leave my stuff outside the door. I have no problems with asking that question.
Yeah, well, it's literally life or death, right? And because there's so much that we do not know. Let me ask you a question. I want to go back to the fact that you were certified. So a lot of people are getting tested. I actually went and got tested because my mom's church offered it. And, it takes sometimes maybe 5 to 7 days before you get your results back.
Too long.
Because at that point, if you were to quarantine, if you would get a positive test, you're already halfway through it, but you've probably been around people. Where is a contract testing, tracing, how does that work? And is that going to be one of the things moving forward to curb this virus, you think?
Well, I know that it was all put in place to help, curb and bring you down and all of that. But it has to be done in a timely manner. You mentioned, getting tested and then you got to wait for 7, 10 days even to get their results back. It's way too long. And then, as we talked about, people relax. Well, I haven't heard anything, so I'm good. So let me just go walk around. Well, that's even worse, So, but the whole thing about contact tracing is to find out who you've been around. Once you've tested positive, who you've been around, have they been notified that you were tested positive and all that. But they were working when I left a month ago. It's like they were working on bringing it closer to the new round of people, because we were doing older people that had it maybe a month before, which does not help. You have to be current on when you're trying to find out this information.
So that you can, that's the whole thing, because those folks could have already gone through it and, and passed through their period of needing to be self-isolated.
Exactly.
And I don't know this, maybe are states still saying that if you come from Texas, you have to have a 14-day quarantine?
Well, the only reason why I know that is looking into it is because I could possibly be going to the U.S. Open. And so I knew that the U.S. Open, I knew that New York was a place that Texas people are really not allowed to go unless you quarantine for 14 days. So I asked the lady that was talking about my contract to do some television work there. And one of the very first questions I said, well, you do know that I can't get in for 14 days. And she was like, oh, well, that's a question. So, but I knew that Texas was one of the people that were banned from New York. So it's definitely still out there. I know for sure Cuomo is not playing. The governor Cuomo is not playing about people coming in. Now, how did they determine when you get there, and how do they determine who's, making sure? I don't know how that works,
I'm talking with Zena Garrison. We're talking a little tennis. We're also talking about the U.S. Open. And I know last year you did a deal where you were there doing some broadcasting as a part of the U.S. Open. And yeah, how would that work? And like you said, where would you stay? What's the going back and forth? And so I've known you like most of your life. And so someone like I'm like, how is that going to work? You would almost need your own personal bubble getting around. Yeah.
I did look into one, trust me. I haven't found one as cute yet, but it's a lady that's funny you said that. There's this lady and she's in New York and she does these pod parties. And they're little pods with your little sports chair and everything. And so when you're outside, but that's a bit much. But hey, yeah, you got to check it out on Amazon. It's just, they're really cute. And they're just like everybody sits there, and she actually is the one that prepares, and they have their little pod picnics is what she calls them. And she's actually doing well. People are actually doing them. So I don't know if I want to be that much talking to people and seeing people.
Well, yeah, you're not that big on, people that much anyway. So, somebody asked me this week about doing a Zoom cooking class for their for their program, and I was like, okay, I could maybe do that. I mean, there's so many ways that people are figuring out how to be social and have some connection, even while we miss human touch, but there's so many ways that we can still have human connection. You and I talked about this. Sometimes people feel isolated, especially if you're just, for people who live alone, and I live alone. Well, I have Angel, which I have to share sometimes with my mother, but I guess it could be, I don't feel it, but I guess that is something that people should. And so I've been encouraging people, call and check on your friends. Don't just text people, pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, what's up? Because that may be the only that conversation they've had. And every chance I get on a forum, I try to encourage people to actually have conversations and call somebody and say hello.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yes, you should do the Zoom show, have your own cooking show. So that would be great.
Well, it's one organization. And so I'm like, okay, well, let me call you guys after my show today and figure out, but yeah, I'll do it for y'all.
Hey, you know what? The great thing right now too, Kim, is people are trying a lot of things that they normally wouldn't have tried and that they're doing and finding out that they like it. And, you're very creative. I'm very creative. And, hey, you just got to go for it. But it's just, it's that time. You're absolutely right. Calling someone, saying hi, checking up on people. And, you and I talked about this before, too. I just think that the world needed a reset. And, we got a much bigger one than we thought we needed, but we got one. And it's just all a matter of resetting your life, resetting some situations. We were moving way too fast, not taking time out, even for ourselves or definitely for others around us. And we just got a big reset.
We got a big reset, and it's a matter of what people are doing with it. And if you haven't done anything with yours yet, you still have time, because we are not on.
We're gonna be here for a minute.
We're gonna be here for a minute. It's unfortunate if we had done some things differently back in March, maybe we'd be ready for kids to go back to school. And so I think that's going to be a big factor also, because if kids are not able to go back to school, how do you talk about having all of these other things happen? Last week, the SWAC has decided that they're not going to have any fall sports. And so they're the first conference to come out and say, definitely no fall sports. We'll see if other conferences, follow suit. Football, which is the big fall sport. I mean, there's other stuff like, cross country, but it's really about football. It is a huge monetary. It's a big money maker for the NCAA and for those universities, and it comes down to money. You know, we know that a lot of these decisions are driven by that. So I'm waiting and curious to see what those decisions are going to be. I know that you and Shanda Rubin have been having all kinds of conversations for the past couple of months on your show, Game Set Chat. Tell us about that show, when people can catch it, and what kinds of things you guys talk about.
Well, we started the show actually in the very first part of the pandemic and the quarantine and all of that. And it was an idea that I took just to Chanda, just, you know, to get some of our tennis friends or entertainer friends and just to talk about what was going on. And, you know, in the, you know, Kim, for me, it was like perfect. I'm like, I could be in my house and you can be in your house and we don't have to go anywhere. So, you know, so for me, that immediately clicked. And I was probably a week or two before people really even started thinking about using it in that way. You know, you've been doing it on your show for years now, but you know, it's just been so much fun and so enlightening. And we do have all of our shows right now on YouTube, Game Set Chat, that you can catch. We have two people that'll be coming up very soon, Martina Navratilova, and also we did an interview with Serena Williams. So within the next week or two, those will be coming out. But I've had some interesting people. One of my fun people has been Billie Jean King. Was my first interview, and Billie just talked and you know, loved doing that. We had Lindsay Davenport on there as well. Lindsay and Chanda grew up together, so it was kind of like a good mom show, and they talked and they laughed and told old stories. So what Chanda and I have found out is that we just we've been really loving just having chats, you know, with different people. And Clyde Drexler actually came on as well. He actually did not want to stop talking, which is
surprising, right?
It was really surprising. When I saw him lay back in that chair, I told Chandler, I'm like, "Ooh, okay, he wants to keep going." So it's been good. So we're trying to figure out how to take it to the next level. And I thank you for always giving us little tips on, you know, what we should be doing and what we need to try to do. So we're working on a couple of little things and trying to make it better and trying to get it out there and having more viewers.
Well, listen, let me know what you find out. All right. The show is Game Set Chat. They do it on Facebook, but you can also see it on YouTube, and you can catch the previous shows. And they've had some amazing guests. I mean, you and Billie have had a forever lifetime friendship, and it's no surprise to me that she was, you know, your first guest. That's just who Billie Jean is. And so you've had, like you said, Billie, and when you mentioned Lindsay, I'm like, man, I haven't seen Lindsay in years. So it's cool to be able to watch the show and see some of these people that otherwise, you know, we haven't seen. So keep up the great work. It's fun watching it, and you and Chanda are doing a great job.
Thank you. And I want to say this too. I remember one of the shows, Pam Shriver, we had. That was hilarious. Yeah. Pam came in, no makeup, hair had not been done, just whatever. She just sat down, and she was so Pam. I was laughing, just even thinking. I was trying to ask questions, but I'm just sitting there just cracking up because I'm like, and she's showing pictures of her and I at the Olympics, and she's pulling out this prop, and it was just, it's been cool. So thank you for the little shout out, and stay tuned.
Yeah, you mentioned Pam Shriver. Of course, it would be funny. I mean, that's who she is. You also mentioned the Olympics, Zena, and I want you to, you know, this was supposed to be an Olympic year, which it was postponed or, you know, moved to 2021. What are your thoughts about the Olympics and the world getting together in one place? Because there's so many people, the villages, so many moving parts. They've moved it to 2021, but, you know, which is a whole nother year, but the preparation for that starts so far in advance. Give people a sense of what it's like being an athlete in the Olympics and being in the village and with so many other people?
Well, for one thing, I think you're right, Kim. I don't know if it'll be years and years and years where they ever really totally feel what we have had the opportunity to feel, where it's nothing like being able to play for your country in the Olympics and having all these other countries together. And I remember my very first time in 1988 going and getting ready for, the march into the Olympic stadium.
That's all.
Yeah, it was Seoul, 1988, Seoul, Korea. And just the colors and the smiles of all the different athletes coming together, and everybody's coming and taking pictures and wants to be, it's like no other. I mean, and the athletes truly, truly feel like it's a sorority and a fraternity, that they know that it's only going to be a certain amount of people that will ever be able to be a part of it as well. And the hard work, I think that's the connection, is everybody knows that in order to get there, everyone has had to put in an enormous amount of work.
I'm talking with Zina Garrison, tennis legend, who of course has been to the Olympics, has played in all the Grand Slams. This is the 30th anniversary of her getting to the finals of Wimbledon, which was, when she got there, the first time since Althea Gibson had been there, there was an African-American woman played in the finals. Of course, since then, we've had the emergence of the Williams sisters and then others, but they were really the next two that came up. And before we go, I just want to ask you this. You and I've talked about this often, but just the run that they have had to be at the level that they were for so many years, more than 2 decades, they were both really right there at the top. It's pretty remarkable.
It's just crazy. I mean, when you sit there and think about how Richard, told us all that he had 2 number 1 players in the world. I must admit,
Richard Williams,
Mitch, their father. I must admit, I figured he at least had 1, but I had no idea that he had 2 amazing ones. The way that they have come, but I think the biggest thing is people forget that Venus and Serena in the beginning used to say all the time, "I will never play into our 30s or whatever." Venus just turned 40 and they're still playing. Serena's right behind her and they're still playing, and still dominating. But what they've done just for women in sports, period, doesn't matter what color you are, what race you are, or anything. It's the barriers that they've broken. And Kim and I talk about this all the time, is, Black athletes have a certain attention on them anyway, but when you take that attention and you just kind of break some barriers, it's even bigger. And, I think that, a lot of times people want them to speak out and say whatever thing. I think right now the rackets have done the talking. But I can't wait to see, when they do retire, what kind of voice they will have as well. Hopefully, and they may have one, they may not have one, but I think that they will at least hopefully see that, their voices are very strong.
So I said I was wrapping up, but there's 2 things before I let you go. Since you mentioned that, there is a young player who has been using her voice, and it's Coco Gauff. And she's what, 16 now?
Yeah, just turned 16.
The way she's been leading off the court, I've been really impressed. Has that surprised you at all, for a young player to have such a voice and to be so out front of a movement like the Black Lives Matter movement?
Yeah, it actually had surprised me. It surprised me a lot that she's been, not that she's had a voice and that she's using it, because I think that these young Gen Zs, they understand and know that they do have a voice and they have a platform, and that their phone can allow them to do things that we never would have been able to do. But I think what surprised me the most is just the impact from what I've heard from people that know her, that strong grandmother, and her grandmother that kept her in the church, keeps her humble, that kind of thing that you just don't hear about anymore. and she has very great parents as well. But for a young person to receive the wisdom from an older person is what has surprised me more, and I think that's why she's so mature.
We're talking about Coco Gauff, and I am talking with Zina Garrison, tennis legend who knows all things tennis. Zina, one thing I think a lot of people didn't know is when you got to the finals in Wimbledon in 1990, and even though you had been number 4 in the world for, you were, the 4 in the world for quite a while, you had no clothing contract.
Yeah.
So, we see later the challenges of Venus and Serena, but you lived it. It was much more challenging for you in your career.
Well, yeah, you know it, and thank you for saying 4 in the world. Everybody want to say, she was top 10. Well, it's like I worked hard for that 4 in the world.
Yeah, I saw somebody I think it put like she was number 5. I'm like, no, she was 4. She was 4.
And probably would have been more than that if it wasn't for that dang Martina.
I know, right?
So, but the interesting part, it's that because of what's happening right now, like that has resonated more with people than I would have expected. And, I've gotten a lot of little notes and stuff, and people are saying, you didn't have a contract? No, I didn't. And like a lot of times, and especially in tennis, they wanted to just make it seem like, oh, she didn't have a contract, she's too shy, she doesn't speak out, blah, 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 blah. She doesn't have the personality. But the bottom line is I was Black, straight up, and, people a lot less than me. And a lot of times they would say to me, if you just get your ranking to this point, then you're going to get some contracts. Okay, so how much? I mean, maybe I could have been 3, 2, and 1, might have got maybe 1 or 2 contracts, but it wasn't until I had center stage at Wimbledon and there was some light put on me that Reebok came to the table with the contract. And that was right before the finals. It wasn't like you went into Wimbledon. The night before the finals, yes. Literally the night before the finals, because I actually I wanted, just because of me being who I want, the day before the finals, I actually went and told Martina that, thank you for letting me wear your clothes, but I'm going to go and I'm going to get a contract with Reebok. And I remember her laughing. It was just kind of like, like, I'm way too superstitious for that. Well, I should have listened to her. I should have just kept it. No, it's all good. Because you had been wearing her clothes throughout the tournament, right? I wore the tournament. Yes, she had a clothing contract, and I actually, she asked me if I would wear them. I said, cool. Like, we were friends, and I wore them, and never thinking that we would both be getting to the finals. Wow. Talking with Zina Garrison, tennis legend. And before we go, Zina, although you didn't get contracts back then, I'm sure you would be willing to take them now. I would definitely be willing. I'm of age. Of anybody out there, looking for a nice older influencer, got a lot of wisdom behind me. I'm more than willing. You're not quite so shy anymore, if that's the problem. Not at all. All right, Zina Garrison, thank you for visiting. I told you 30 minutes, but I guess we knew that wasn't going to happen. Thank you for spending time with me on Chalk Talk today. Make sure you check out her and Shannon Rubin's show, Game, Set, Chat on YouTube. And we'll have to do this again soon, and I'll be talking with you about whether or not you're going to the U.S. Open. Well, thanks a lot, Kim, and keep up the great work. All right, that was Zina Garrison. As I mentioned, she is... she's a tennis legend, right? And she's my friend from childhood. So it's always fun to talk with her. I talk with her all the time, but to talk with her when you guys can share in the conversation. That's going to do it for us today. We're right at the top of the hour. So thank you for being a part of Chalk Talk. If you will, share this video. I'd appreciate that. And make sure that you follow me on all my platforms. On Twitter, it's at Kim Y. Davis. On Instagram, it's kim.y.davis. And also, don't forget about Kimmy Treats. If you're looking for some really cool snacks you want to send to some of your friends, go to kimmytreats.com and you can order some of my vegan popcorn. It's really good. Or some of the organic body butter. So that's it for today. Make sure that you do a couple of things. Do something kind for yourself
and do something kind for somebody else. And also wear your masks and stay socially distanced. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for being a part of Chalk Talk.